Not, so for example, if a instrument evaluation did not go near one of those locations, then that would be a training flight, not necessarily a mission training flight.
So for this flight, ADSB out should have been off according to your policy.
On 29 January, yes, it met all the criteria for the policy.
Okay, I'm going to hold on that and come back. Member Graham. Member Inman.
I'm going to follow up on it, on that exact line. On those missions that the MOU didn't require the ADSB out to be off, how many do you think prior to January 29th you flew where ADSB was turned on?
The exact number, I am not sure.
It's okay. It's a general 100, 12, 2,000?
I'll work with percentages, probably less than 20%.
Less than 20%. So on those 20%, and I know you probably can't break it down, but based on what we had found in the evaluation working with your team, on those Lima models, excuse me, in the Mike models, even if you had it turned on, would it be broadcasting ADSB out?
And what we have found through the investigation is there was an incorrect setting. Essentially, when the Lima model helicopters were upgraded with ADSB, call it a maintenance task, so during installation, those maintenance procedures, there was conflicting maintenance procedures. We have found that during this investigation, the ADSB out was not functional. But once it was identified during this investigation, we swiftly made that corrective action and distributed it to the entire Army.
Do you know how many beyond just your aircraft? I think there were 7 out of 8 that were not broadcasting correctly. Is that right?
I'm not familiar with the exact amount, but it was the majority of this 16 that we currently have at Davidson Army Airfield.
Do you have any idea how many other models were affected throughout the national airspace?
I'm not aware.
Could you take that as an IOU to check or to let us know? I know it's not you don't have the entire national airspace, but I'm going to ask who I have right now. That's okay.
But what I would add is the Army did, issue a safety action message that was widely distributed, and we received it almost immediately once we determined, at Davidson Army Airfield there was a potential fault.
And we appreciate that. I think we were made aware of it, so thank you. Have either one of the representatives of the Army, have either one of you been in the DCA tower cab?
I have not.
Check. Yes, sir. I've been up there a few times, and I've taken pilots up there for tours.
Okay. Did you actually kind of look a little closer at what the helicopter operator, what they do and how they operate just to get familiarized?
Yes, sir. And while I was there was actually helicopters on the DC Healer routes. So we were actually able to see the calls and see the communication between the aircraft and the tower.
Great. Did anything surprise you whenever you were in there doing that tour?
No, sir.
Mr. Allen, I guess for familiarization with the DCA, this I found to be very interesting as we read the interviews. We've been talking a lot about routes, and we've talked about the river. We've talked about how it was constructed. Whenever a controller is controlling from that helicopter position, do they actually see the routes on their terminal? Are they able to know if an aircraft is within the route or not? Or the zone?
They can visually observe out the window. On the radar display, they can pull up the route map or the zone map or both maps. And a hard copy of the map is also available in the tower.
Do they ever pull them up on the radar scope itself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll go back on that one then. I apologize. It seemed like in reading a number of the interviews with the controlling staff that they spoke or talked to us about that they did not usually see or have the river indicated, nor the route overlaid on top of it. Does that seem correct, or is that just a misperception in reading the documents?
It would be controller preference to overlay the entire helicopter map if you wanted to do the routes and the zones with the items that are already depicted on there. And then in addition to that, all the data tags and stuff, it can become very cluttering. You can turn it on, turn it off, you can dim it, you can make it brighter. You can really customize it to what each controller would like to see and how they want to see it. So it would be controller a controller's prerogative. If they
What
wanted
if the
to see it.
controller was operating in a combined environment, when they were doing not only local control, but helicopter control? Would they have both up at that time?
They could if they chose to.
Okay. See, I'm over. We're close.
You weren't over. Okay, I'm going to go back to ADSB. Colonel DeForest, so the accident helicopter was capable of transmitting ADSB out. And what it was not transmitting ADSB out on the accident flight, you just talked about why. And we found, though, that the accident helicopter's transponder began to respond to Mode S interrogations near Cabin John and continued until the midair collision occurred. However, the actual data wasn't transmitting. In fact, the accident helicopter had not been transmitting ADSB data for 730 days. Under your policy, are aircrew permitted to switch between transponder mode or to turn on ADSB out during operations while in flight?
No, they're not.
Have you ever heard of a situation where the transponder would just start spontaneously responding to Mode S interrogations? I'm going to stop right there.
I'm not aware of any.
So I'm not asking you to speculate. Have you ever been aware of a crew member to turn it on in flight, of a crew member turning on ADSB out during flight in violation of your policy?
I'm not aware of that in flight, per the policy.
Would the only way that would be come on be that somebody would have turned it on? Or is there some other way?
I believe it would probably take human interaction to turn ADSB out on in a Lima model, because it's several steps.
That's what I'm going to ask you. What's the process for turning it on?
Having never flown a Lima model, I'll defer to Mr. Van Vechten behind me of what that procedure is.
Yes, turning on the ADSB out. In a Lima model, you have to go through several different pages. Mode S is 2 button pushes, though.
So you would have to you would have to go through several menus.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
That. Okay. What would have occurred in this flight had the time setting been correct and had the ADSB out been on, because it was on, just not transmitting? Colonel DeForest or Mr. Van Vechten, whoever wants to answer.
For ADSB, I'm not aware of a crew member cockpit indication that ADSB.
No, I mean, what information would have been provided? In this case, if it was transmitting ADSB out, what would have been provided? What would have occurred in this situation if, in fact, it was operational and didn't have this setting error?
Sir, I can take that.
Yep, if you don't mind.
In your blind spot. Hello. So if ADSB out was working, you would have had, in addition to the Mode S identification, you would have had the position, the barometric altitude, the geo altitude. You would have had a velocity vector. Is that what you're asking for, ma'am?
Yes. So in this situation, had the setting been correct, because it was on, that's what it would have been provided.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Who was responsible for installing the transponders? What organization or entity, not person? If you don't know, you can get back to me.
Yeah, we'll get back to you, but it was a fielding team, just like we do all of our modification work orders for new equipment to aircraft, ma'am. And it's various groups of contractors or civilians who go to units to do this activity.
I see. So the Army contracts it out, and then a contractor would do it.
Or a civilian group could do it as well.
Okay, great. And so we found that the accident helicopter and in fact 7 other Limas from the 12th Battalion were not transmitting ADSB data because the helicopters had the incorrect time source setting programmed during installation. The setting should have been 059, but it was 153. The work order for installation that I looked at of the APX-123 transponder contained instructions to set the time source on the RCU to the 153 setting. The work order for the installation of APX-123A, same thing, APX-123, but this one was A, transponder included instructions to set the time source to the 059 setting. Is that correct? No, I'm over.
Instruction, I don't have the instructions memorized, ma'am. We can get back to you.
Okay. Those instructions included steps for the 059, so that's the APX-123A alpha. Those instructions included steps to use a transponder test set to confirm proper functionality of ADSB, specifically that the test set received the flight ID, aircraft address, and the GPS position and altitude information. Prior to the accident, did you do any sort of checks on the ADSB to confirm that they were in fact installed correctly?
To my knowledge, we did not conduct those checks based on conflicting maintenance manuals.
And were there, prior to the accident, were there any sort of checks prior to takeoff to ensure that ADSB worked if, in fact, you weren't going to a mission site?
There was no procedure in place. However, every flight out of Davidson, they do that check today.
And that's what I'm about to ask you. So talked about the safety alert for a second because you did take action with that information.
Yes, ma'am, we did immediate action.
What did you do?
Well, our maintenance OIC, and working with the officer in charge,
Okay.
in working alongside AMCOM and the NTSB, worked to package up essentially the language in the ASAM, safety action message. And almost immediately, once that message or that procedure was established on the airfield, within a day or so, we reconfigured all aircraft at Davidson Army Airfield and had successful ADSB out checks.
So essentially a safety alert went out, to paraphrase.
That is correct.
And this is my last question on this. Will you include those checks during regular maintenance intervals in the future, or what are you doing now?
Right now, every flight is checked.
And is that 12th Battalion or Army-wide?
I can only speak for 12th Battalion.
Can anyone else speak for the rest of the Army?
Ma'am, I'd offer for the Army, it's assessed as a high risk if they don't have ADSB out. So it's incumbent on the unit to probably check that. Otherwise, they're going to have to say it's a high risk. But by that I mean that if it's automatically high risk if they have ADSB installed and they don't know that it operates. If they know that it operates, then that de-escalates the risk. I mean that an 06 like Colonel DeForest doesn't have to approve every single mission that happens. So it pushes the unit to want to be in compliance.
So do you know for sure this is not?
So we're tracking the field's compliance with ADSB out. We know it's over 95% now. The numbers probably changed since I looked at it.
The checking ADSB out?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Or yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Member Graham? Member Inman?
How do you test that in the field, in the wild? I'm sorry. Just how would you know?
So there are test kits which you can use that are fielded to the units that were fielded along with the transponder you can use on the ground. But another method that we've promulgated is to actually take a flight with ADSB out indicating that it's operating, and then after the flight you can query an FAA database and see all of your fields and see if they were operating when they were supposed to do, and those instructions have been sent out.
Is that a new procedure?
The test kit is not a new procedure, but the extra details on actually querying the FAA website has been clarified recently.
So on these test kits, is that something that's done routine? Is it sent around? Do you have to request it? The Army has procedures for everything.
So test kits was, did not have a definitive test interval, but now that we have this policy for ADSB out compliance, it is being checked on a regular basis. I would guess anytime the transponder is serviced, which can be, 12 months, 24 months, it's going to be checked.
Okay. Mr. Fuchs, do you have the transcript, the page? Okay, well, I apologize. I've been trying to get a document pulled up, so I'll just try to read it a little bit if that's okay. And this goes back to Mr. Allen. We talked about earlier having the actual, if you will, for lack of a better term, helicopter route displayed, and that's on the STARS display, is that right?
Yeah, on the tower radar display.
And that's something that's normally done, is that correct?
If the controller chooses to display it, yes.
Okay, they choose to display, or do they normally have that up?
It's controller dependent. If somebody's new in training, they're going to have all the maps up and have them displayed so they can continue to learn and orient themselves with the arrivals and departures and the other items that are associated on the radar map. Somebody that maybe has more time at the facility may not choose to view it.
I'm just going to go to page 64, the transcript of the local controller on the night of the accident. The question was, do you have an overlay of helo routes on your tower display? Answer, yes. Answer, you can put the helo map on the STARS. Question, okay, was it up that day, or do you normally not have it on? Answer, normally we don't have it up. Question, is the Potomac River dictated or I think we now have it up, sorry. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, it starts at line 13. Is the Potomac River identified or depicted on the radar maps that you use? No. Isn't the Potomac River the actual map itself? Is that not the guidelines or the parameters?
You can depict the map, or depict the river, I'm sorry.
So why would this controller not believe or say that you could?
I can't speak for his answer.
Okay. Colonel DeForest, for the Army, I guess, we've had a good opportunity to hear. There's been a lot of lessons learned, and I want to commend a lot of quick action, it seems like, to try to correct things across the entire NAS. What other areas that are safety items that have been identified so far that have not been corrected?
When we look at our, risk management within the organization, you always looking to ID those hazards, come up with a corrective plan, and then assess them. To date, throughout this investigation today, I am not aware of anything, but I asked anybody in the room if they know something, please inform us. We know what we know, and we will rapidly and swiftly address them. And that's where we need help, in my opinion. But to date, throughout this investigation, our crews that are ready to go today, right now, they're as safe as we understand them to be. And I have full confidence in that.
Okay, I wasn't trying to draw you into something. I'm just trying to get an understanding. Out of the entire operating unit for PAT, what's the balance between Lima and Mike? The numbers.
So within 12th Aviation, we have 16 organic Limas, 8 organic Mikes, and then a National Guard company minus with 10 Mike models. So on the airfield, there's 34 Black Hawk helicopters.
And how many of them are Mikes versus Lima?
So within 12th Aviation, 16 are Limas, 8 are Mikes, and that's organic to 12th Aviation. And then we have an additional 10 on the airfield to supplement our mission requirements in a rotational National Guard unit. And they have 8 Mikes. So in total, there's 34 Black Hawks.
So I guess, and tell us again, which one's a better model, which one has a better avionics, more safety features built in?
This would be, in my opinion, both Lima and Mike are adequate for our mission.
No, sir, that wasn't the question. Which one's a better aircraft?
I've got to ask for a clarification on objection. When we're talking about other airplanes not assigned to this accident, why we're discussing Mike models in this forum. Happy to discuss it in another forum, but the
Okay.
relevance to the accident of the 29th, the relevance to which.
Okay, that's fair, Brigadier General. That's fair. I'll tell you what, I'll reframe the question. PAT 25, who determined or decided it would be a Lima model or a Mike model?
That would be based on the approval level of the weekly flight schedule, and that's the battalion commander, so Army Lieutenant Colonel.
So is there any deliberation of whether or not it's a mission-critical flight to determine whether it's a Lima or a Mike model flying?
Yep, and I'll defer to Mr. Van Vechten on that one.
The flights chosen for the aircraft chosen for the flights is based on the crew currency and qualification. So if you're assigned to one of the two Lima companies, you maintain currency in a UH-60 Lima, and your evaluation will be done in a Lima, and vice versa with the Mike. There was only a few of us who maintained dual currency because we didn't want the interference going back and forth between the two aircrafts because they are significantly different.
Okay. See, I'm out of time, Chair.
Don't worry, we have several more rounds. 7 o'clock is not going to happen. Okay, Section 1046 of the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act prohibits the Secretary of Transportation from requiring the installation of ADSB on fighter aircraft, bomber aircraft, or other special mission aircraft owned or operated by the DoD. 2, denying or reducing air traffic control services in U.S. or international airspace to such aircraft on the basis that they are not equipped with ADSB, or 3, restricting or limiting airspace access for such aircraft on the basis of the aircraft are not equipped with ADSB. This is outlined in a memorandum of agreement between DoD and the FAA. That MOA goes through the roles and responsibilities of both parties to ensure safety in the DC airspace. The MOA is dated April 16th, 2024, which was prior to this particular accident. How often is that MOA reviewed?
I don't know the normal periodic. I'm having a fumble here.
Yes.
Need a little more water. But we are currently have a work group reviewing that MOA as we speak.
Okay. Do you guys need more water? You're good? Okay. So is that codified or written anywhere on the how often that MOA is evaluated or other MOA?
I don't know at this time. I would have to check back with the administrator's office to find out how often that's changed.
Understood. So you said the MOA is being updated now, is that right?
That's correct. They have a working group going to modify that MOA. In the meantime, the administrator has put out strict guidance on the National Capital Region.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for that. Excellent work. So generally, and I'm going to ask you maybe Mr. Van Vechten, maybe, I'm not sure, I might get that wrong, and Mr. Fuller, could you talk about how DoD and FAA coordinate to ensure operational safety in the DCA region and more broadly in the national airspace?
So we have military liaisons in all of our field offices. In addition, we have what they call liaisons for certain areas. And so I know that we have a lieutenant colonel based here in headquarters that I meet periodically with to discuss changes. We have a CIS operations security team that meets with the military to discuss potential missions or changes to the letter of agreements, things of that nature. At our command center, we have DoD assets embedded within our command center out in and they coordinate mission-specific requirements or airspace challenges to alleviate weather concerns, but we are in continuous and constant contact with our DoD partners.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. The volume and complexity of mixed traffic requires so that's an MOA. So letters of agreement that outline specific procedures for conducting operations within the DCA Class Bravo airspace. By my count, it's 15 different sets of letters of agreement, so 15 different letters of agreement that provide different procedures for DCA Tower. There's Andrews, there's Virginia State Police, DC Metro, FBI, MedStar, Air Force, Army, 12th Aviation Battalion, DC Army, National Guard, Air Force, aerial events, Potomac Tracon and DCA Tower, National Capital Region Air Defense Facility. I could go on. How often are any of those letters of agreement revisited?
I would have to specifically reference the letter of agreement requirements within the 7210.3. I believe it's either an annual or every 2-year requirement, but I'll have to get back to you.
And what's the process for that?
It would be a local facility review. Any updates, changes would be required to be reviewed by the Mission Support Service Center and also coordinated for environmental.
So DCA Tower would do it?
Yes, correct.
And do they bump it up or they just decide?
Can you clarify?
Do they make recommendations and someone higher up decides?
No.
Makes the final decision?
The air traffic manager would be signatory to the LOA.
Okay. How does having 15 LOAs, and I'm just going to, you've got 15 LOAs. We've got, I'm just going to take a current. Air traffic control procedures. I mean, it's pretty lengthy. How does this affect workload? I mean, that's a lot.
Well,
Different procedures.
So do you mean locally or in general?
I'm going to ask how it affects DCA Tower.
Okay. I'll defer.
So the having 15 LOAs is not, I would say, uncommon.
Sure.
Pre-accident, the majority of the LOAs with the helicopter users were just in reference to special VFR operations. There is several of them that do include additional items, mission requirements that they may have, but the majority of them had the same language for the special VFR requirements.
There were some differences.
Yeah,
So
there are some differences for specific units or missions.
And how do controllers, I mean, and I'm asking, and you know what, I'll ask during training tomorrow. I'll ask that during training tomorrow. Okay, Member Inman.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm assuming you okay.
Colonel Force, in regard to the PAT-25, the mission on that night, I'm going to get a little bit into your tasking in the National Capital Region. Had the crash not have occurred, what would have been the continuation of this flight? Can you walk me through to the end whenever it's finished and over?
Yeah, based on the RCOP and what we know is they were continuing Route 14 to return to Davidson Army Airfield.
And they would have been finished at that time?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay, during the initial week of I believe in our response, the initial week, and I don't know if this is entirely factual, so please, I'm just curious. There was a discussion that you had to do evasive maneuvers as part of this checklist or check ride. Is that correct?
Evasive maneuvers that's not a mission task.
Okay, that's not part of the proficiency or the check ride?
In other Army aviation units, they can be considered, but that is not a mission task. There's no reason why we would practice, navigating a radar environment, like when we look at threat radars or surface-to-air threats, things of that nature, like a deploying unit overseas would do. But for evasive maneuvers, that's not a mission task within 12th Aviation.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the PAT-25 flight again. Was there anything that prohibited or required this flight to occur while commercial operations were occurring at DCA?
There was nothing commercial related that would prohibit this flight along their planned flight route.
My question, I guess, could they have done it at 2 a.m.?
Without, yes, I think I know where you're going on this.
Okay,
They
I'm
could
trying to
have.
draw you to
Yeah,
somewhere. I'm
yeah.
just saying, in
The,
these check rides and in other flights, do they have to be done while there's a push going on at DCA or while commercial activity is going on?
the broader context is our mission crews, they have to look at their duty cycle. So if the instructor pilot is on a duty line the next day, he has to be on the ground by a certain time. I don't know if he was, scheduled against a duty line the following day. But there's a very finite window where we can, based on our duty schedule, conduct training both day and night.
Is that a complicated task for your battalion?
It's a challenge, but it's sustainable. We are resourced to sustain that type of level of scheduling.
Had that flight not have occurred, let's say a weather caused that flight to delay, does it automatically get moved to the 2 days later, 1 day later? Does it fall into another cycle?
It would be based on instructor, the person being evaluated, and then aircraft availability. So I wouldn't anticipate more than a 7-day delay.
And at the time of that flight, were all your pilots still staying or current, I guess is the best way to describe it?
So for the entire battalion, certainly.
I'm not going to ask you to do the entire battalion, I'm sorry.
There's certainly, maybe a handful that would be medically grounded. Or when we look at, this is a risk conversation, non-medically grounded too. So those do occur in our unit. So nothing was out of the ordinary to me, in my opinion, based on the crew mix composition that evening.
I guess I'm going back to, was there anything leading up to this that was complicating your group to conduct their mission? Lack of parts, lack of people, transferring of positions. I'm going for a very broad concept here, and I know you've been interviewed a couple of times, so I'm just trying to get your opinion in that.
Yeah, my honest opinion, right? Month of January was significant, as in our greater mission, when we look at what we support with not only Joint Tasks National Capital Region, which is our contingency missions, COG and COOP, but also United States Army Military District of Washington. So we support national special security events. The month of January had 3, and that's a busy time for the organization to include all the weather. So the lead up, when we look, my assessment across the formation was we had essentially executed 3 large events for the organization. That's not just specific to 12th Aviation Battalion. So I don't have that assessment that we were a fatigued organization. We were probably the most proficient as an organization. Now, when it looks, you look at your duty lines, that's our primary focus. When I look at 12th Aviation Battalion, their primary mission is COG and COOP, and everything else follows after that for mission priority. So we were, at that time, on the 29th, a very ready formation. Certainly with the loss of 3 crew members, there's a readiness impact, and we're still recovering from that.
Do you feel comfortable telling a pilot or telling a crew not to fly? Do you feel that you've got the power to say, don't go?
Absolutely, 100%.
Does your entire organization, do they carry that? And I'm looking behind you, actually.
I believe so.
Sir, that's a true statement.
Is there any pressure from above you to say you need to be able to execute certain missions that you feel like you don't have either the equipment or the resources for?
I can't think of any specific instances where I felt pressure to execute a mission.
I'll use an example today. We requested, so Bravo Company, 12th Aviation Battalion. We have a lot of people watching right now, and we gave them the opportunity to do that. So there's others maintaining our line right now, and we know that's important. So that would be an example of knowing your people and reducing risk to the greatest extent possible.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Ms. Murphy and Mr. Stowe. The helicopter routes we know have no lateral dimensions, no lines per se. Mr. Stowe, I just want to make sure I have this right. Did you say that controllers are responsible for monitoring flights to ensure they stay on the route? I just want to make sure I have it right.
I don't, well, I think the context would have been they would be responsible for monitoring the flight to ensure they have the appropriate separation. So whether they
appropriate separation, but not deviating outside of that. Because there's no lines,
correct.
They're not responsible for figuring out, oh, they're a little bit over in the Potomac River than where they should be.
If it impacted separation, I would expect that they would absolutely inquire as to why they may be further east or west than would be expected.
Well, what would be expected if you don't have any clear lines there?
I think it would be traffic workload situation dependent on if there's an expectation from the controller that the helicopter is at least along a general route, but if they are a half mile west, for example, that the controller would need to take action if it impacts separation.
Mr. Allen, on the Falcon replay, where in the Potomac was Pat 25? Was it on the east bank of the river? Maybe first start with what is the Falcon replay, because not everybody knows that.
The Falcon replay is the replay software program that the FAA uses to replay radar data.
Okay. So do you know where Pat 25 was on the Potomac there, on the Falcon replay?
From my recollection, Pad 25 appeared more center of the river.
More center.
Yep.
And if you are a controller who is working in the tower, you're handling 6 different flights. Actually, within 10 minutes, I counted, he was dealing with 21 different flights, helicopter and civilian aircraft. At night, can you see that there may be over a little bit more?
It's difficult due to the altitude there. They can blend in with the cityscape behind them, as well as the helicopters do not operate all of their lighting systems that are available.
So if it was a little bit over, you might not know the difference if you were looking out.
You may not.
It's nighttime.
Right.
So I'm going to ask again, whose responsibility is it to ensure you're on the east bank of the Potomac River? Controller or the pilots on board, the crew?
If you're using that as a separation standard, the controller needs to be the one to assign a heading that would put that helicopter on the east bank. In this particular instance, the controller approved visual separation for Pat 25, and I would, again, be purely speculating.
Don't speculate.
Then there's no way for me to know how he would
Right.
assume he was navigating along that bank.
And okay, I'm going to stop that one, and I'll ask more tomorrow. I want to go back to Ms. Murphy. How do you do an evaluation if somebody requests a change on the route? Do you know? You're in the visual charting for FAA.
Exactly. So Aeronautical Information Services, my visual charting team, is not responsible for evaluating what air traffic control submits. We do work alongside them, and if we see something completely out of the ordinary, say an altitude that would just be impossible to fly at, we'll question. Aside from that, we really are, the Aeronautical Information Services visual charting team receives the information, we receive the data, and we chart it as requested.
Okay, so these 3 hotspots that were identified in an FAA November 2022 symposium, Hotspot 1, JPN, Memorial Bridge transition. I think the request was to include something on the chart that said pilots use caution for runway 33 departures when DCA is in a north configuration, which this one was. Runway 1519 arrivals when a south configuration. Hotspot 2 was Haynes Point. Hotspot 3 was Joint Base Anacostia, Bowling, Route 4, Power Plant region, and the request was to have something on the chart that says pilots use caution for fixed wing arrivals to runway 1 and to runway 33 when DCA is in a north configuration, runway 1519 departures in a south configuration. You're not aware of these recommendations?
I am aware of those recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, in 2023, Aeronautical Information Services received the requests from the DCA Helicopter Working Group, and I believe that's where those recommendations were made. Again, we implemented all of them with the exception of the addition of hotspots due to the fact that they are not within the VFR aeronautical charting standard.
Did you offer an alternative?
I have no evidence of offering the alternative at the time. However, it is our standard operating procedure to work with air traffic whenever possible to solve problems and to make the NAS safer through charting.
Okay, because I know you said they had some other route they could bring this up.
Yeah, it was the aeronautical charting meeting that Aeronautical Information Services hosts twice a year. It's our outward-facing outreach so that stakeholders and aviation industry can make recommendations for the aeronautical charts.
It just sounds very bureaucratic to me. You can just go seek it somewhere else rather than perhaps you might come back and say, well, we can't do this, but we can do that.
Oh, we do, absolutely. So what we do is we'll work with them, and I think as a result of the working back and forth, we added a caution note. I don't want to misspeak and say something that I don't know about for sure, but we work with the air traffic control offices to solve and address any issues that they might have.
Can I just ask, the request for, and I'm sorry, I'll be done. The request for language that said pilots use caution for fixed wing arrivals to runway 1 and to runway 33, you did that? When in a north configuration?
I cannot confirm without it in front of me. Can I take an IOU?
Yeah, I don't think you did that.
Okay. I know that we added several caution notes at that time and also modified others. I just don't recall exactly which ones they were.
I'm just going to say that this is the very event that would have been the cautionary note for north configuration, fixed wing aircraft landing on runway 33. Member Inman. Member Graham. Member Inman.
I'll follow up on that. For charting, do you handle the entire United States?
My team does, yes.
Your team does. Are you aware of the special notices for LAX? I may be showing you something you haven't seen, but the LAX, it's not up there, don't worry.
Okay, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, so I can't comment, yeah.
The reason I bring it up is we found this as an exemplar of, I know you said you put some cautions in the notice section, right? LAX currently has a special notice, a caution, says intense helicopter operations. That seems a little bit more than a caution. It actually specifically describes when operating a line parallel and 1 mile north, the 91 extension gives all of those. They need to make regular position reports when not in contact with ATC. They give additional specifics. I guess I'm curious, how does LAX already have intense helicopter operations, and it's been there for some period, and DCA, which is being described by everyone here as being one of the most complex helicopter systems in the United States, did not have one before this accident?
They did not ask for it.
But they did they not? They
asked for hot spots.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Can I? On March 15th, 2023, the working group formed for a safety risk management panel focused on exactly that. Let me just quote what it said. These routes and zones, referring to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart, in the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport ATC Tower airspace, that's what it said, these routes and zones are heavily traveled by medevac, military, law enforcement, photo missions, VIP movements, and support other special operations. In conjunction with the helicopter routes and zones, there is a high volume of fixed-wing aircraft that operate in the immediate vicinity of the published routes and zones. The current helicopter routes and zones have changed very little since 1999, while airlines, aircraft types, approaches, volume, complexity, crews, and many other factors have evolved. The Baltimore-Washington helicopter route structure has not. With the current route zone structure, helicopter operations are occurring in a proximity that has triggered safety events. These events have been trending in the wrong direction and increasing year over year. And then they recommended action. But are we really going to say, well, they didn't do enough? I'm not looking for an answer right now because honestly, I don't get it. Every sign was there that there was a safety risk, and the tower was telling you that. Yet you know what FAA did? After the accident occurred, you transferred out the air traffic manager, two assistant general managers, and the support, staff support manager or support person. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact title, but what you did is you transferred people out instead of taking ownership over the fact that everybody in FAA in the tower was saying there was a problem. But you guys are pointing out, welp, our bureaucratic process, somebody should have brought it up at some other symposium. Are you kidding me? 67 people are dead. How do you explain that? Our bureaucratic process? Do you know we actually added up how many steps it takes to get from the tower to headquarters to figure out, and we ran all sorts of scenarios, how many steps it takes to get a policy change. 21 steps. Fix it. Do better. Member Inman.
I don't know if that was my time or yours, but I don't think it doesn't matter. We're here for a different reason. I'm going to go back to, actually, I'm going to read something. As part of this process from the FAA, did you go back and look at the ASRS reports around DCA?
We did do an evaluation of the ADSAP safety reports and the ASRS reports around DCA, correct?
For the ASRS, was anything troubling for you in looking through those reviews?
We noticed there were a few indications of helicopter conflicts with fixed-wing aircraft. They weren't in the vicinity of helicopter Route 4 and runway 33 primarily.
This one was an oldie but a goodie, but it just tells you, I think it came from 2013. It's number 1127815. This is where an actual controller agreed and said he was describing a conflict event involving a helicopter operating a photo mission and an air carrier arrival. The reporter suggesting improved and standardized procedures for handling helicopter photo operations. But in the narrative, one of your own air traffic controllers says, our helicopter operation is an abomination of the picture of safe aircraft movement. Do those trouble you?
Any report that mentions an aberration of safety is going to trouble me.
So what action gets taken after something like that?
I can't speak to what happened in 2013, but
I'm saying anytime. I'm just using this one as probably the best example because it's not like this problem just popped up.
so if it's an internal report to the facility, they have a local safety council that can take immediate action within their facility. It's a management and union representation. If they need additional support from external, you have district resources, QC managers, support specialists. If it's something that requires more, we've got director level support and service centers for it. DCA would be Atlanta. For the other areas, it'd be in Fort Worth or Seattle. but we do have support to make sure that any immediate concerns we adjudicate and address.
What was, you said you looked at the ASR, or sorry, the ATSAP in regard to this incident. Since we have not seen that, what trends did you find in the ATSAP data? Because that's held internally and hasn't been shared with us on this. Again, what did you see in that you can disclose?
We didn't find any additional trends that will report in the specific operations around helicopter Route 4 and runway 33. There was just no data, no reports that suggested this was something we missed. Again, I think some of our military counterparts have indicated we don't utilize runway 33 very much for our operations, and so we just did not have enough safety data that indicated that was an outlier.
You don't use, so if I understand it correctly, you don't use runway 33 very often, is that right?
That's correct. It's about 5% of the operations at DCA and North Flow.
And why is runway 33 then used?
It is an available runway, and sometimes the controllers may use it to resolve an overtake situation on runway 11 just to offload some traffic.
So as traffic increases, they need an exhaust way to clear traffic out, is that right?
It may not be an increase in traffic, it may just be a slower aircraft in front.
Okay. I'm going to pause on that. I think I may go back to it tomorrow. Go ahead.
Well, well, before I go on to the totally different topic, Colonel DeForest, and we're going to go into this in the panel 5, but I don't even know if you're in panel 5. Today's Wednesday. That's 2 days from now.
I am.
You are? Okay. Well, I'm just going to ask while we're here. Do you, in order for you to get this information of ATC has raised concerns, you know, apparently several times, you'd have to ask FAA, correct? Or FAA would have to notify you?
That is correct. And we have an agency, the United States Army Aeronautical Services Agency, that would provide that to us. And
Were you, go ahead. I'm
and
sorry.
we do receive what we call updates to the field. So within our brigade, we have an airfield division that does, you know, regular and routine interaction with the FAA. These types of reports that we're discussing right now, they're not pushed to us. Let's just call it that.
And I know I saw you in some of the minutes, and not you, the battalion in 2019, 2020. The hotspots and the like that were put forward by Tower. Was this investigation the first time you learned of that?
For me, since being in this unit since August, yes, this is the first time.
How about anybody else in your unit? Were they aware?
I would hope.
That you know of.
Without asking Mr. Van Vechten behind me, who was, you know, here 2 years prior to me at least.
Mr.
So,
Van Vechten, how about you?
No, ma'am, I was not aware.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to switch gears for a second. I'd apologize, but I'm not going to. There are thousands of pages in the docket, so I have more questions. But I'm going to switch gears, Colonel DeForest and Mr. Van Vechten. For pilots coming into the Army Aviation Brigade, what experience or background in aviation are you seeing compared to maybe years ago?
So this is, when we look at flight hours.
Flight hours, sorry.
It's less than it was years ago, and this is something Army Aviation is tackling.
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned, a little bit surprised, sorry. When I was reading the transcripts, it seemed that I would have expected the people we interviewed would have had more hours than they currently have. It seemed kind of low. In fact, Colonel DeForest, you mentioned in your interview that you asked Mr. Van Vechten, sorry, talking about you, what the greatest challenge is. And you said, I think, my opinion, consistent across a lot of Army aviation units is what we're seeing is that composite cockpit time steadily going down and down and down. So he used, and he, meaning Mr. Van Vechten, used the example about 5 years ago, we would have had thousands and thousands of hours cockpit. Now we have hundreds and hundreds of hours cockpit, and that is usually, I've heard that before in other organizations. I experienced it when I was in USA PAT as a battalion commander, same, very similar challenge. It's the aggregate flight hour experience across aviation formations is steadily decreasing. Is that your biggest, one of your biggest challenges, I would think?
Absolutely.
Just like the airlines are probably experiencing now. So I want to talk about currency. Numerous 12th Battalion personnel said that we interviewed, that they are pushing to get flight hours every year. Is it 60 hours every year? I'm sorry.
It's 48 hours every
48.
semi-annual, so 96 annually, ma'am.
96 annually. And is that something you're seeing? I mean, numerous personnel said that they were pushing to get the minimum hours. Are you aware of that?
I will comment on that, ma'am. It depends on the individual. The more qualifications you have, the more opportunity you have to fly. So if you're an instructor pilot, you're probably going to fly more than your typical basic co-pilot because you can do evaluations, you can do proficiency flight evaluations, and you can also do missions.
How about staff officers?
So staff officers has historically been challenging to try to find time to get the experience. Sometimes they'll get their currency, but currency doesn't always equal proficiency. So that is a challenge to maintain proficiency in the aircraft and not just currency.
And why is that? For people who are not familiar with what a staff officer's responsibilities are compared to them getting flight time.
So the way that I'd explain that, ma'am, I explained to someone earlier, between a commissioned officer, a captain, lieutenant, major, colonel versus a warrant officer. A commissioned officer is an officer who happens to be a pilot. I'm a pilot who happens to be an officer. So my primary focus is aviation. I focus in one specific area, which is aviation. Commissioned officers, they must be have more skill and knowledge across a wider band of topics because they will typically do those staff positions where warrant officers will stay in the flight company longer and perform and be the continuity for the unit.
Thank you so much. Member Graham? Member Inman? Sure. Continuing on, what kind of training did pilots who were joining the 12th Aviation Battalion receive from the Army for operating within the DCA airspace?
So once they arrive, ma'am, prior to their first flight, they must complete the FAA DC Special Flight Rules Area training online, and then the academic, including the reading card file, and then a local area orientation covering all the local area.
Thank you. And in flight school, what model of aircraft are they trained on?
They now begin on the UH-72 Lakota for primary contact and then move on to the instrument phase. They fly the basic warrior skills, BWS, in a UH-72 Lakota where they learn basic land navigation from an aircraft. And then they move on to their advanced airframe, either the AH-64, the CH-47 Chinook, or the UH-60 Mike Blackhawk.
And those are more advanced than the Lima?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you go through flight school on these more advanced aircraft. You don't have a lot of experience in aviation. Let's say you're new. And you go through school in these advanced aircraft, you learn to fly, and then you come to the 12th Battalion and you fly the Lima, so you basically fly steam gauges.
Yes, that's correct, and that challenge is not unique to 12th Aviation Battalion and TAB. Most units, most combat aviation brigades across the fleet have at least one UH-60 Lima company. so that we conduct the training support package to qualify that new pilot in that aircraft that they've never flown before.
And does that present challenges and just to ask, do you have pilots that only fly Mike or only fly Lima?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
In TAB specifically, there were only a few people that would go back and forth because of the significant differences.
Okay, and so if you were trained on the Mike, you go to the Lima, maybe talk about some of the challenges that presents.
Well, the UH-60 Mike has a fully coupled flight director, also known as autopilot, so it maintains an altitude, a heading, and an airspeed. It'll do a fully coupled ILS. It can track to a VOR while maintaining altitude and airspeed. The UH-60 Lima has a force trim system, which is kind of like a force gradient that holds the cyclic, the stick in place, and then the Corrective has a friction that you can turn on or off, which will hold the Corrective in position.
On the Mike model?
On the Lima.
On the Lima model.
The Mike model has a full autopilot.
Full autopilot, okay. And you're kind of getting to where I'm going. Some of personnel from the 12th Battalion that we interviewed said there were some differences in managing power and pitch.
I would say the power management aspect is negligible between the UH-60 Lima and the UH-60 Mike. Pitch, I would say, is more significant. If I input an altitude and an airspeed to hold in the UH-60 Mike, it's going to hold it as best as it can. There are external factors like winds and turbulence and stuff like that, but the UH-60 Lima is 100% pilot controlled, so much more of the focus is dedicated to maintaining altitude, airspeed, and heading.
So if I'm just going to read you this quote. This was a quote from one of the personnel interviewed. To maintain exactly 200 feet in a Lima is quite different, where in a Mike model, I can roll in, rad out, hold to the water at 200 feet or 199, and the Mike model will do that, where a Lima, maintaining at exactly 200 feet over the water is challenging. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree.
Why?
Well, first, I wouldn't, personally in a Mike, I wouldn't couple to radar altitude over the water.
Yeah.
There's just too many variances with the signal bouncing off of different structures, and you're going over bridges and stuff like that. So I would couple to typically 180 feet on the UH-60 Mike, which is right near the max for the 200. Where in a UH-60 Lima, you have to kind of set the Corrective and use the friction lock, which is on the right seat only, on the right side of the Corrective, and kind of friction it down to maintain the altitude, which requires the pilot to come in the cockpit more often to look at their altitude.
Thank you very much. Member Graham? Member Inman? Okay. So we talked about the challenge to maintain proficiency. We talked about the officers. How about the availability for getting more hours? How about the availability of aircraft resources? We did interview quite a bit of personnel saying it's an aging fleet. A lot of times they're in maintenance. Is that, do you know, do you agree that that presents some difficulty?
The difference between Lima and Mike is at 12th Aviation, the Limas are more maintenance intensive, yes.
Yeah. Do you want all Mikes? Do you want to get rid of the Limas? Oh, come on. This is this is like a softball.
Standardization. I seek standardization and safety. And
Well, you want standardization of all Limas?
from a cost, blade time, a Mike model, as I understand, in the unit that I command, yes, a Mike model is less expensive. And having a pure fleet would save time and money.
Thank you. I think that was echoed by everyone that was interviewed, is they would rather have a one model being the Mike model. I'll do what I can to help you out in appropriations, only if we're fully funded. Okay. How are crew trained on the approaches to DCA runways? How are they trained, for example, on a circling to 3-3 approach?
There's no training that takes place for that, ma'am, for rotary wing aircraft. We don't train fixed wing procedures.
I'm sorry, I don't mean, how are they trained in knowing that a fixed wing aircraft would do that?
That would have to be through personal knowledge when you're given a circle to land, but that's not something typically we would discuss as helicopter pilots about fixed wing procedures. For instance, I've heard pilots be cleared for the Mount Vernon visual. I'm not familiar with that, but I assume they come in from Mount Vernon and then fly a visual approach. But we don't specifically train helicopter procedures or airplane procedures, excuse me.
I guess what I'm wondering is, if you're flying a helicopter, you're on the Potomac, how are you trained to know that a fixed-wing aircraft would circle to runway 33 and what that flight path would be?
You'd have to kind of interpolate based on when you initially saw the aircraft, which in this case was at Wilson Bridge. If I heard tower say you're cleared circle to land runway 33, you'd have to kind of visually find the aircraft when it's circling to land, which would be very difficult under goggles.
So that's not part of their
No, ma'am, that's not.
training?
No.
Okay. Did you have any knowledge, was it a surprise to you that there was a max of 75 feet vertical separation at the east bank of the Potomac, where the glide slope for 3-3?
Yes, ma'am, that was shocking. Based on the hundreds and hundreds of hours I flew in this area, like I said, I did not think that was allowed for a helicopter to be on that route while landing runway 3315.
And this might not be a fair question, and you're welcome to get back to me, but if you did know that before, how would that have changed your operations?
If I knew that that there was the vertical separation,
75 feet.
I would have told pilots not to cross the center line of the approach path until you saw the aircraft either take off or land.
Thank you very much. Member Inman. Well, first, Member Graham. Member Inman.
I just want to make sure we've got the ability, go as long as we need to, but that we can recall a couple of these witnesses on Friday or whenever we want to?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We only went 10 minutes over. Do you all have additional questions that you'd like to follow up on? Feel
Yes.
free. We are here.
Yes, ma'am.
This is your time to get all your questions, so go for it.
There are a couple questions.
We figured that out. Okay, I just have a few clarifying questions because I want to make sure we are able to all leave on the same page and that we document things correctly and have a full understanding. So I know we've danced around these things a good bit, so I apologize for rehashing. But to understand the VFR helicopter routes, if I understand what I've gleaned here today, helicopter routes they have no lateral boundaries, they are suggestive in nature, or they are suggestive, and the altitudes that are published with them are suggestive, not mandatory. And helicopter routes are requested normally by air traffic managers at facilities that feel they need or desire helicopter routes to move traffic. Can I ask you, Mr. Allen, you had said earlier when you responded to a question about the helicopter flying in altitude, you expected them to be at the published altitude that was listed on the helicopter route chart. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you feel that that is the controllers, the control workforce at DCA, ATC, that's how they would understand it as well?
Correct.
Did it surprise you to hear that these altitudes are suggestive in nature, barring an actual additional instruction from air traffic control?
It didn't surprise me because it's a VFR chart, but having the facility knowledge, knowing that the operators, I feel, they believe that they're a hardened altitude as well as the controllers do. I see both sides of it.
Okay. So in reality, at the end of the day, the whole route is suggestive in nature, meaning if the air traffic control issued no additional instruction or restriction when they approved them to fly the route, if they flew above the route, below the route, above or below the published altitude, or outside left or right of what the drawn line is, there's no violation, correct? FAA?
It would depend on the specific instruction, whether there was a violation in 91-123 or any individual clearance. And I think that's why earlier I was specifying it may be very situationally dependent.
Wow, I was hoping for clarification. So
I think
so I don't want to misquote something later is really the deal. I want to make sure that I'm have a very clear understanding. If a helicopter checks in and says, I want to fly from A to B via that helicopter route, and the controller says approved, the helicopter, of course, has to follow any other normal rules within the airspace they're flying and all of that. But from the standpoint of the helicopter route itself, if he drifts left or right of the route, or if he goes above or below that altitude, he's in no violation of not flying that route. And unless air traffic control gave him a restriction along with it, like approved, maintain, at or below 200. Now he has a restriction from air traffic control that is a positive control, right?
In that scenario, yes, I believe that is accurate.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Soper, can I say one quick thing on that?
Yes, absolutely.
That is not the helicopter operator's understanding.
Can you express what it is from your group or from yourself?
Absolutely. When you check in Class Bravo airspace and you ask for, what the first call would be, say request, right. And then I provide that request, and I say what my routes or my zones or both. And prior to about 2 months ago, we were not using altitudes in our initial requests. However, as you said, when you receive approved, that's approved as requested. And those limits, the chart is as depicted. The lines are as depicted, and the altitudes are as noted. That is all of our understanding. So I can't speak to where the misunderstanding comes from. I understand the vague term of it's not regulatory, but we don't fly like that. The tower controllers approved our request, or they might deny our request and give us something else. But if it's approved as requested, we follow exactly what the chart says.
Well, that's helpful and confusing. So I just I'm in that same struggle bus right now, because I feel like if these routes are requested by air traffic managers to move traffic through their airspace under a certain criteria, they assign these altitudes. They're not arbitrary. There's a reason they want them at or below 200. There's a reason they want them at or below 1,000. Various reasons, obviously. But as an air traffic controller, I'll be honest with you, I'm learning something new here today I didn't understand, because I did assume if I was working in a control facility and they check in and I put them on that route, I'm expecting them to maintain that altitude. I do understand not having a lateral boundary, but I was unclear on the altitude. I don't think we need to go any further down it today. I think I've got a good grasp on probably what needs to be discussed on this one. So I'd like to move to a second one. Mr. Van Vechten, this one's for you. You have mentioned a couple of times now the perception that it was a rule, essentially, that you would not cross the final approach course of runway 33 if there was traffic inbound to that runway. Do you know where you got that perception?
or where that came from. Did somebody tell you that? Was it part of a group you went to? Did somebody instruct you with that on air, or how did that work?
Based on my experience in every single time that I saw traffic landing 1533, that I was told to hold at the two locations. And it was, just like to clarify a little bit what you said earlier, so is it under your assumption, sir, that if I'm at 201 feet, it's a violation then?
Well, I'm not saying air traffic's in the world of violating. I mean, from that standpoint, no. I just meant there's an expectation, as Mr. Allen mentioned, that you're going to maintain the published altitude on there. If you pop up above for a second, like he said, you're going to watch that for a second because you're a helicopter. You're maintaining clear of other stuff and everything else too, and that's a very low altitude. If you come up a little bit and then you come back down, they're probably not going to say anything. If you're up at 400 though, and they see you clicking along at 400 for a few miles, they're probably going to say something, right?
Yes, that's
or there's an assumption they might. So, not what you said, right? So how long would you say that has occurred a lot? Have you had a lot of instances where you were actually flying that route with aircraft landing runway 33, or has that only been a handful of times, or what's the frequency for you?
Again, it's only a handful of times because of the large percentage that lands 119, so it wasn't that often, but 100% of the time I was not allowed to cross.
Okay. And Clark, you mentioned earlier that's more of a technique that was taught at one time by some people at DCA. Is that correct, at the airport?
Correct.
And it has, to the best of my knowledge, I think we discussed it while we were on site, that was never an actual procedure that they were required to hold aircraft short when they had an aircraft on Route 4 and an aircraft landing 33. Is that correct?
It was technique only.
Yeah, it was technique always, and then some people taught that, some people didn't, and I know there was discussion that somebody always did it that way. So I was just kind of curious because when we started talking about that as a rule, it was confusing. So I wanted to be sure where you got that. So just to be clear, if you were trucking along on Route 4 going southbound and you've passed Haynes Point and all that, and then you look out and you realize, oh, there is an aircraft turning inbound. It looks like he's turning inbound to 33. Would you turn around and go to the golf balls, or what would you do? Or would you just query air traffic?
I would make an immediate left turn if I was south of Haynes Point because I know that's going to keep me clear of the approach path.
So from an air traffic control standpoint, would that bother you if you've cleared this guy or you've approved this guy to fly Route 4 and you're working your traffic and all of a sudden you see him turn off of Route 4 somewhere else? Would that be alarming to you at all?
Yes, but he's seen and avoiding, so.
No, I understand that. I just meant, though, that
I would want him to do that.
You'd probably query him, I would assume,
Yes.
at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think I understand that part now. And the last one was earlier we were talking about the prevalence of use of runway 33 and how it was only 5% of the use when they're in a north configuration. I feel like that might be a deceiving metric, and I would like this is for Mr. Fuller and for Mr. Allen to respond to. But if I understand, that metric seems to be based on traffic count. So we're in a north configuration, only 5% of the operations actually land 3-3 when we're in that north configuration. That's a low number, or less than 5, whatever that number was. But I think the metric that's concerning for us is it's the amount of times when they're in a north configuration that runway 33 is used to offload traffic is going to be a bigger number. And what I mean by that is, I feel like it is based on the stuff we've looked at, and Mr. Allen, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. When I say that, I'm saying if you had 100 days that you were in a north operation, how many times when you're in a north operation do you guys utilize runway 33 at some point to be able to offload aircraft for spacing, to get departures out or whatever?
It's a controller's prerogative, but it would be, if you took 100 days, a majority of the time.
And that's the metric that's probably, I would hate to just glean over that as not a problem because it's only 5% of the operations. I would think that if we're doing that let's just say 70% of the time we're in a north operation, we're having to utilize 3-3 to offload traffic. In order to do that, you're injecting risk 70% of the time you're in a north operation whenever you have to do that. I mean, type of thing. I may have got that a little mixed around, but essentially I just felt like that metric was there. And just to be clear, Mr. Fuller, the number that you did give, that was traffic count, right? Maybe you already, because I don't want to misquote that metric either.
Well, no, that's correct, but that is the only metric that would really apply. I don't really understand the differentiation of if it's every day. If we're only using it 5% every day, it's still 5%. And I think that would apply to every airport in the NAS. We offload to parallel runways or intersecting runways to resolve conflicts or traffic situations or to increase capacity. It's not an uncommon thing to utilize your additional runway for traffic management.
Okay, I think it's more than just a numbers thing to me, but I'll have to articulate that in writing later. So, but I do think I understand it now. So that's all I needed to clarify. That's all I got.
I think it was Colonel DeForest that mentioned during our investigation, 7 of the 8 Limas at the 12th Battalion stopped broadcasting ADSB after installation of the APX 123 Alpha transponder. 6 of those Limas stopped transmitting ADSB about 2 to 8 months after installation of the APX 123 Alpha transponder. And we found the time source setting was incorrect for those. Would that suggest the time source setting was changed at some point between the initial installation when it was successfully radiating ADSB for about 2 to 8 months until when it stopped?
I'd be unaware if it was manipulated or changed willingly.
Mr. Van Vechten, do you have anything to add to that?
No, sir, I'm unaware as well.
Do the UH-60M helicopters also have the APX 123 Alpha transponder?
Yes, they do.
And on the APX 123 Alpha transponder, the ADSB function is coupled to Mode S. Is that correct?
It's an extension of the Mode S function.
So by turning on Mode S, if the ADSB squitter setting was on, it would automatically start radiating ADSB as well?
I'm not familiar with the pilot interface, but typically it does the same functionally in this airspace. So I don't see a reason you would just do Mode S or just do ADSB out.
At the Army Aviation Brigade, prior to flight, under what circumstances would a crew set up a transponder to transmit only Mode S, but not ADSB? In essence, you would have the ADSB squitter setting off, but you would turn on Mode S.
So from a technical perspective, I'll defer to Colonel DeForest and Mr. Van Vechten for operational, but from a technical perspective, as you're probably aware, Mode S functioning in this airspace through multilateration gives the same position information and barometric altitude information to air traffic control and TCAS. So from an operational security perspective, you're transmitting the same information at the same frequency, whether you're doing Mode S or ADSB out.
Okay. And
One thing, sir, from an operational standpoint, it is possible that the Mode S was inadvertently turned on. With the interface through the GPS, it could be very easy to accidentally turn on Mode S. Accidentally turning on Mode ADSB is much more difficult.
that leads me to the next question I had was that Colonel DeForest had mentioned that it's with the policy of not changing the transponder modes during flight, that it would take about 20 steps or so to turn on specifically ADSB. Is that correct? But for Mode S, it would only take 2 presses of a button on the transponder control unit?
That's correct.
And so if Mode S is tied to ADSB, my understanding is that the ADSB squitter setting is saved when the transponder is powered down. And so if the ADSB squitter setting is on, and by turning on Mode S, it would automatically start radiating ADSB as well. if it only takes 2 button presses to turn on Mode S and to turn off Mode S, why limit a crew from turning on Mode S for more awareness with ADSB out when you get to a busy airspace like near DCA? If it's only 2 button presses versus the 20 just to turn off the squitter setting, if you could just turn it off by turning Mode S off and on.
So for the flight on the 29th, it included mission locations. So they're going to go through there as they would on a mission line. So that step would be followed.
But from a pilot's perspective, would that be difficult to turn on Mode S? In terms of the policy, is that too constraining if it only takes 2 steps to turn it on and turn it off in flight?
No, that wouldn't be difficult.
And just to clarify, what you're asking is turning on Mode S in flight is less taxing on the pilot or aircrew than turning on ADSB out on in a Lima model?
Correct. And since the Mode S is tied to ADSB on this transponder, and the setting saves with the power down of the transponder, i.e. you don't have to go on to turn the squitter setting on each time. If you're not using Mode S while flying to sensitive locations anyways, you could theoretically change the Mode S setting, or the transponder setting, sorry, to turn on and radiate Mode S and ADSB once you've left the area with the secure locations. But with policy, though, prohibiting changing the transponder setting in flight, you would, by policy, limit a pilot from turning on that squitter setting and Mode S.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to make sure that clarification was made. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. McKinney?
Yes, Mr. Van Vechten, I have one follow-up question to what you mentioned. You said it would be easy to inadvertently turn on the Mode S when switching GPS. Could you expand on that comment, please?
Yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't catch that. I misspoke a little earlier. I said GPS instead of transponder. Good catch.
Okay, thank you.
Chairwoman Hamady, I believe that's all the follow-up questions we have.
Thank you. Can I forgot to ask one question. Mr. Allen, you said the tower, so I imagine the CDTI display, I don't know, I'm not a controller. So in the tower, ADSB, it's ADSB capable, but you don't have ADSB on. Like you're not getting ADSB information?
What I was referring to is on the radar display, it can annotate if the system is receiving ADSB data or not, and that's not typically turned on.
Can I help clarify?
Yeah.
So ADSB data may go into part of what's interrogated for the purpose of creating a fused radar target. However, there's no requirement for air traffic controllers to specifically monitor the status of ADSB out. It wouldn't impact separation standards, for example, so they're not required to monitor it.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to follow up or no? You've got, okay, great.
And, sorry, there's one caveat. I'd have to get it to you in the 65 in the event of a certain radar outage feeding ASD, but I can provide you that. It wouldn't, I think, have been the case in this instance.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes panel 2 and day 1 of this investigative hearing. On behalf of my fellow board members and the NTSB staff, we extend our appreciation to the participants in this hearing. Before we close, I do want to ask Mr. Baranowski to please review any new exhibits, and I know we have a few from the Army that were admitted during this hearing.
Madam Chairman, the exhibit from the Army is the 2017 ASAP report that was filed by MedStar.
We can't hear him.
That's-
Step up.
I'm going to repeat it.
Okay.
We got it.
That was by the Army. I believe that was the only one that was official.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
It was the 2017 ASAP report filed by MedStar Transport.
Okay, so for the Army, 2017 ASAP report filed by MedStar. Is that correct?
That's what we're looking for, actually.
Okay, thank you. All right, the record will remain open for the addition of exhibits admitted during the hearing. So the transcript will be made available to the parties and witnesses electronically within 7 days of the completion of the hearing. Any corrections to the transcript must be sent to the hearing officer by September 1st, 2025. As a safety agency, we take fatigue very seriously, so we ask that the Board of Inquiry and parties to please refrain from contacting NTSB staff from now until 7 a.m. tomorrow. If you have questions or need assistance in the meantime, please reach out to the Office of Aviation Safety Director, Tim LeBaron, the Deputy Director, Dave Helson, or the Deputy Managing Director for Investigations, Brian Curtis. To NTSB staff, you did an excellent job today. Thank you. So see everyone tomorrow at 9 a.m. We stand adjourned.